Welcome to Insights. I'm Adam Rivers.
And I'm Sarah Collins. In this episode, we'll reflect carefully on the Qur'an verse by verse, focusing on wording, context, and coherence.
Exactly.
Because, the whole premise of Insights is really about avoiding that overwhelming information overload. We want to extract those profound underlying wisdoms from revelation.
Right. Finding those real aha moments.
Yeah, those moments that just reframe how you see everything. And if you've been following along, this builds directly on where we left off.
It really does.
In our last episode, we were exploring the completion of human vicegerency on Earth with the whole narrative of the descent. We unpacked what is essentially this profound, ultimate formula for salvation.
Yeah, that was a heavy one.
It was. The idea that whoever follows divine guidance will be completely freed from the paralyzing grip of future fear and, past grief, living in this continuous state of tranquility.
It's totally connected to the Creator's light.
Exactly. But that brings up a really crucial flip side, which we have to talk about today.
Yeah, we really do. So today we're looking closely at Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 39. Let me just read the English translation first.
Right.
It says, "And those who disbelieve and deny. Our signs, those will be companions of the fire. They will abide therein eternally."
Wow. That's a really stark contrast to the tranquility we just talked about.
It's intense, right? So here's the question we need to explore today. If following guidance brings you absolute peace, what exactly is the mechanism and the ultimate consequence when a human being uses their free will to actively choose the complete opposite?
Yeah, it's like, how do you even get to that point?
Right. So let's start at the very beginning of the verse. It actually starts with a conjunction, the word and, which in Arabic is wa.
Just a single letter, right?
Literally just one letter. But it's doing so much heavy lifting. That and links this tragic path directly to the previous verse about guidance. It's establishing this stark binary. There are only two paths in existence for you.
So it's basically saying, here is path A and here is path B.
Exactly. Now, let's look at the linguistic root of the word for disbelief here, which is kuf.
Okay.
In ancient Arabic, kufr doesn't mean what we usually think of as like passive ignorance.
Really?
Yeah, it's not just you didn't know something or you didn't get the message. It literally means to actively cover or hide or conceal something.
Huh.
For example, an ancient Arab farmer actually called it kafir. Why? Because he takes a seed and he actively covers it in dirt.
Oh, wow.
Right. And the night itself is called kafir because it actively covers objects in darkness.
Wait, so are you saying that disbelief in the Quranic sense isn't just someone casually not knowing something? It's actually a deliberate, positive action of the will to suppress the truth?
Yes, that is exactly what it is. It's a conscious crime against the human intellect.
It completely changes the whole paradigm.
It really does. Because, look, the human being possesses this pure, innate disposition, the fitra, and an intellect that is perfectly capable of recognizing the truth.
The seed is already there.
The seed is there, the light is there, but the person actively chooses to throw dirt on it. They cover it up.
But why, though? Why would someone do that to their own mind?
Well, it's usually due to arrogance, or maybe fleeting worldly interests, like acknowledging the truth might cost them something financially or socially.
Right, it's inconvenient.
Super inconvenient. Or it's just a blind adherence to ancestral traditions. Whatever the reason, they are deliberately disabling their own mind.
That is, wow. Okay, so to put it in a real-life context for a second, it's the difference between genuinely not knowing there's a leak in your roof versus seeing the water dripping, grabbing a bucket, painting over the water stain, and just aggressively telling yourself it's not raining.
Yes, exactly that.
But keeping up a lie like that internally, it's exhausting, right? So how does the verse show this escalating? Because you can't just keep painting over the water stain forever.
Let me ask you this. What happens when internal suppression is no longer enough to quiet your own conscience?
I mean, I guess you have to start forcing the lie out into the world.
Bingo. And that is exactly where the verse goes next. It says, wakahabu, which translates to, and they denied, or belied.
There's that and again.
Yeah, the and implies an accumulation. It's stacking evil on top of evil. Now, the root of this word, kahaba, means deliberately speaking against reality.
So it's moving from internal to external.
Right. This is declaring war on the truth. The denier is now actively trying to prove that light is actually dark.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. They are
Yeah.
expending immense psychological and social effort. They have to build these massive, complex systems of self-deception, not just to fool themselves anymore, but to actively block the path of God for everyone around them.
Yeah, because if someone else walks into the room and says, hey, your roof is leaking,
Yeah.
their whole illusion shatters.
Exactly. They have to convince you the roof is fine too, or their internal lie collapses.
Okay, so they are launching this massive, aggressive campaign of denial. But what exactly are they denying? Because the verse uses a very specific word for the object of their denial, right?
It does. It says, they deny by ayatina, which means our signs.
Okay, break that down for me.
So first you have the prefix by.
Yeah.
In Arabic, that implies a direct attachment or collision.
Like they are crashing into it.
Yes. Their denial isn't happening in a vacuum. It is directly colliding with the signs. And the root word ayah means a clear indicator that points to something else.
Right.
And Revelation talks about three main types of signs. First, you have the cosmic signs, the galaxies, the physics of the universe, the balance of nature,
The big stuff.
the really big stuff. Then you have the psychological and biological signs, your own anatomy, your cellular machinery, the mystery of human consciousness itself.
The stuff right inside you.
Exactly. And third, you have the recited signs, the actual words of Revelation. And notice the verse uses the plural form here.
Because there isn't just one sign.
Right. There is an overwhelming, inescapable abundance of evidence everywhere you look.
But wait, you mentioned it says our signs with that na suffix. That implies ownership by the creator. And when you think about the sheer scale of the mismatch here, I mean, you have a tiny, fragile human being on this speck of dust we call Earth, deliberately trying to gaslight the majesty of the creator of all cosmic laws.
It's absolutely terrifying when you frame it like that.
It's literally absurd, like you are fighting the universe.
It is the ultimate tragic paradox, because colliding with God's signs means you are colliding with the inescapable laws of existence itself.
And you can't win that.
You cannot win. It's a fatal flaw in human perception. It's this terrifying spiritual blindness where someone looks at the majestic architecture of reality and just tries to scream it out of existence.
Which really brings me to the sequencing of these words, because the verse mentions the internal covering, the Kufr, before it even mentions the external denial, the takdib.
Yes, the order is perfectly precise.
Why is that specific order so important for us to understand?
Because the battle always starts internally.
It doesn't just spontaneously happen outward.
Never. A human being first extinguishes the light of their own innate nature. They ignore that quiet voice of their conscience.
The covering up.
The covering up. And only after that internal defeat to their own arrogance do the physical limbs and external actions actually follow. The outward vocal denial of the signs is just the final visible symptom of an internal disease.
Wow. So the shouting and the aggressive denial we see in the world, that's just the exhaust fumes of an engine that's already broken down inside.
That is a perfect way to put it, yes.
Okay, so that perfectly sets up the second half of the verse, which shifts to the consequence of all this.
The destination.
Right. And usually when we think of a consequence or a punishment, we think of a physical place, like being thrown into a prison cell. But it's more than that, isn't it? Because if you are locked in a room with your worst enemy, that room isn't just a place. It becomes a psychological torment.
Absolutely.
So what is the specific phrasing used here to describe this destination?
Well, think about this. Why doesn't Revelation just say they will be in the fire or they will be punished by it?
Because it wants to convey something deeper.
Exactly. It uses the phrase Ula'ika, as-hab an-nar. Let's look at those words. First, Ula'ika.
Which means?
It means those.
Yeah.
But it's a demonstrative pronoun specifically used for things that are distant.
Oh, indicating distance.
Right. It physically shows in the language how far they have banished themselves from divine mercy.
They push themselves away.
They did. Then you have the word as-hab. This is usually translated as companions.
Companions of the fire.
Yes. But the linguistic root implies a close, inseparable matching, a state of perfect harmony.
Harmony with the fire. That is chilling.
It is terrifying psychological imagery. They aren't just randomly thrown into a punishment. Their internal state now perfectly matches the fire.
Because of who they became.
Exactly. Look at how they lived in the world. They burned with the fire of envy. They burned with arrogance, with destructive desires. They actively destroyed every seed of goodness around them.
They were essentially walking infernos already.
Right. So they arrive in the afterlife, and they just find the exact environmental equivalent of their own ruined souls.
That completely changes how you view divine consequence. It's not an arbitrary sentence handed down by a judge. It's the universe basically saying, you wanted to be fire. Here is the environment that perfectly accommodates what you built yourself into.
It is perfect, terrifying justice.
Which honestly brings up one of the biggest philosophical dilemmas people have.
I know exactly where you're going with this.
Right. Like, how is it just for someone to face an eternal consequence for a crime that was committed over a short, finite human lifespan? Say you live 60, 70 years. How does a finite crime equal an eternal reality?
It's the ultimate question. And Revelation answers it with the final phrase of this verse. Hum fiha khalidun, which means they will abide therein eternally.
Okay.
Now, linguistically, this is a nominal sentence structure. In Arabic grammar, a nominal sentence dictates an absolute, unchangeable permanence.
As opposed to a verbal sentence, which implies something might end or change.
Right. But to answer your philosophical question logically, you have to understand the nature of the crime itself. The act of covering and denying the signs is not just a mistake. It's not a slip of the tongue.
It's not just a bad afternoon.
No, it is a comprehensive existential stance. By the time they reach this state, the corruption of their intellect and their heart is completely irreversible.
It's cemented.
Yes. If you took these individuals and let them live forever on Earth, their absolute intention would be to continue denying forever.
Oh, I see.
Right? So eternal permanence is simply the exact objective equivalent of their eternal intention to reject the truth.
Wow. So time doesn't even matter at that point.
Time is irrelevant. The justice is in matching the absolute permanent nature of their choice.
That makes so much sense. It's about the trajectory of the soul, and that trajectory has locked in.
Perfectly locked in.
So let's bring this ancient linguistic breakdown into our modern reality. Because, we aren't ancient farmers burying seeds in the sand anymore. We live in this era of advanced science, incredibly complex societies, smartphones, AI. How do these ancient behaviors of covering and denying manifest today?
They manifest everywhere, and the analysis really highlights two massive modern extremes.
Let's hear them.
On one side, you have this intense scientific arrogance.
Oh, yeah.
You have individuals who study the miraculous precision of cellular biology or the staggering math of astrophysics, and they use those exact miraculous signs as the tool to deny the creator.
They literally use the evidence to dismiss the author of the evidence.
Yes, they cover the innate truth with this thick veil of so-called intellectualism.
And what's the other extreme?
The other side is blind traditionalism. These are folks who completely paralyze their own intellect. They might chant the words of revelation, but they do it blindly without ever trying to understand its profound meaning.
It just becomes a cultural habit.
Right. They don't treat it as a constitution for life. And both of these extremes are actually committing the same crime. They're covering the intellect.
But wait, this brings up such a huge issue today, the social echo chamber.
Oh, absolutely.
Because both of these groups build these massive echo chambers, right? The scientific arrogant types rebrand their disbelief as, enlightenment, and they call belief backwardness. And the traditionalists just ostracize anyone who asks a logical question.
Exactly.
So how does Revelation actually dismantle these massive cultural systems that make disbelief or ignorance look so appealing?
It dismantles them by completely bypassing societal traditions. Revelation doesn't care about your echo chamber. It appeals directly and individually to your intellect.
It singles you out.
It singles you out. It demands liberation from blind adherence to your ancestors or even to imported modern cultures that clash with your pure human nature. It forces you to stand alone and take responsibility for your own mind.
You can't just hide behind a group identity.
No, you can't say, well, my professor said this or my culture did this. Revelation removes those excuses.
So, looking at this whole profound causal law we've been tracking, the action of denial leading inevitably to the consequence of the fire, how does Revelation protect the human intellect from, fragmented or distorted interpretations of this law?
By presenting a law of absolute justice that favors no one. This equation denial equals consequence. It doesn't care about your race, your lineage, or your social status.
It's universal.
Entirely universal. God created humanity for mercy, but the individual uses their free will to write their own ending. And the beautiful thing is Revelation interprets itself to protect against misunderstanding.
Give me an example of that.
Well, to truly understand the spiritual agony of this fire we've talked about, we just look to other verses in the Qur'an. There's a verse that describes the fire leaping over the hearts.
Over the hearts.
Yes. This cross-reference proves that the torment isn't just arbitrary physical pain. It specifically targets the very center of consciousness and awareness, the heart and the intellect, which is exactly what they chose to disable and cover up during their life.
Wow, that brings it completely full circle. It's like the universe holds up a perfect mirror to the exact faculty you decided to destroy.
That is the absolute reality of it, yes.
Adam, thank you. This has been such an exceptionally clear, highly logical breakdown. You really unpack not just the consequence, but the deep psychology behind why and how someone makes that tragic choice.
It's a heavy topic, but it's so necessary to understand the mechanics of it.
It really is. So for you listening, let's just summarize the massive ground we've covered today. We've seen how disbelief is not just passive ignorance. It is an active, exhausting covering of your own intellect. We've traced how that internal suppression escalates into an external warfare against the truth, and we've uncovered this really chilling reality that eternal destinations are simply mirrors of our own internal states and ultimate choices.
Perfectly said.
So I want to leave you with a profound philosophical question to think about today. If the signs of ultimate reality are woven into every single leaf, every heartbeat, and every letter of Revelation, what internal veil are you still holding on to that prevents you from reading the universe exactly as it is?
That's a question we all need to ask ourselves.
Absolutely. That's it for this episode of Insights. If you found this reflection helpful, follow the show and join us next time as we continue verse by verse in the Qur'an. Until then, take one idea from this verse into your day.